Good afternoon, everybody. Father Leo here again, and I have a very wonderful guest with me today. He's a man who came into the priesthood 47 years ago and has spent that 47 years in ministry. And he's probably one of the hardest working priests that I know. And he has a really good news story to share with you today. And we hope that and his name is Father Peter Seabrooke. So as Father Peter shares his story, it is a good news story. A wonderful, it says in the scripture, I've run the race, I've kept the faith, and there's raised up for me the joys of heaven. So Peter has run the race, kept the faith, and spread the faith, and built up the faith of countless numbers of people. So it's a real honor for me to have Father Peter Seabrooke here with me today. Welcome, Father.
You're welcome.
And nice to have you. Now, Peter, as you look back, you said 47 years. And I was a little amazed at that because I hadn't done the arithmetic. So you were ordained in 1972, right?
Correct.
72. Okay. So would you start with back then? What was your dream like in 72? What did you see when I use the word church? Because that was in a transitional period, as you know, from the pre-Vatican to the Vatican Council Church. There was a transitional period. So can you talk to me a bit about what that was like for you?
You mean the dream I had, or just what
Yeah,
the
start with
experience
your
was
dream,
like?
and then the transition.
I don't think I used the word dream then, but if I did, it would have been in the context of enjoying parish ministry.
Mm-hmm.
That was basically it, or whatever comes with that.
Well, yeah, it comes with that, eh?
Yeah.
So that was your going through the seminary and leading up to ordination. The sort of the sense was that you would work in a parish and serve the people.
Yeah. I never thought I'd be involved in the special ministries that I have been involved in.
Like what?
Well, like right from the beginning, after 2 years, I became youth director of the diocese.
Right.
And with Camp Northern Lights went along with that. Well, I certainly never expected to be doing that.
Right.
You know.
That was out of your comfort zone.
Well, yeah, my idea of camping at that time was Holiday Inn. Camp Northern Lights wasn't Holiday Inn.
No, I guess not in those days, so I understand. It has improved a lot since then.
Oh, yeah, it's a totally different experience now.
Yeah.
But I never expected to go back and get a master's in family care and counseling and do that for a while. So I never, I left parish ministry after 2 years, never went back to it till nearly 10 years later altogether.
Yeah.
Then,
What was it, family and youth ministry or what?
No, it was family ministry. Youth was part of it. I recognized as youth director that we should be working with the family and not just the kids.
Uh-huh.
So that's why I went into that. But a big thing that came along during that time, in the very late 70s after I came back from Ottawa, was my involvement with Worldwide Marriage Encounter, which I was
right.
with until the middle to about 2005 or 6, somewhere around there. And that was a big conversion, not a conversion experience, but it was a very spiritual experience for me in understanding where the church is at and understanding the priesthood.
Huh.
And yeah, I was involved with the charismatic renewal for a very short period of time, but again, it had an influence on my prayer life, although I didn't get to stay with the ministry very long because I became youth director.
Right.
But anyway.
And didn't you have a role to play in bringing St. Vincent de Paul to the city?
Yes, again, that goes back to my days of studying at St. Augustine's Seminary and interning in one of the two parishes in Toronto. I discovered that the St. Vincent de Paul Society was very active back then.
Uh-huh.
And so as soon as I opened up Christian Family Ministries, people were looking for a handout, and that wasn't really our specific purpose. But I remembered the St. Vincent de Paul Society, and I went to two people who had grown up in the Depression, and I thought they would be compassionate.
Right.
And it went from there, except that St. Alphonsus was already underway because Worldwide Marriage Encounter gave birth to St. Vincent de Paul in St. Alphonsus Parish.
Oh, yes.
And then the rest of it, we had to have a charter, and lo and behold, back in the early 1900s, the cathedral had already been aggregated in Paris, France, and so it was easy for us to really reactivate something that was already there. Yeah, but that came out of the family ministries, from my perspective, and I'm really pleased that it's still continuing on, not only in the city deanery, but the southern deanery, because when I was stationed down there, we were able to get it going in every parish in the southern deanery. So, yeah.
So you've really touched base on a lot of different ministries you're in, except the last one, Peter. What was the last one? No, I think the most joyful one.
What do you mean?
At the Chancery office.
Well, it was another thing where I never expected to, and I know you've had this happen to you in your ministry too, but there are certain things I never expected I'd ever be called to do, and one of them would be Chancellor of Temporal Affairs, because I'll always remember one day when I was still in the seminary, I had worked on one of my cars, my only car at the time, and did a job that was very simple, but because I didn't know what I was doing, I made it complicated. My father told me to make my living with people, not my hands, or I'd starve to death. And so for me to work with temporal affairs was interesting. And then, of course, my idea of computers at that time was basically word processing, but I wasn't up to speed with Excel. And that's temporal affairs lives on Excel.
Oh, yeah.
So I had to learn something about that. But anyway, all the way along, I've been blessed with, even from the days before I went to seminary, I was blessed with an appreciation of the role of lay people in the church. And they've always come through. I might have been in, like at Camp Northern Lights, the staff that was up there were fantastic. In temporal affairs, of course, the staff, not only the paid staff, but the volunteers in the parishes who are committed to that aspect of parish life, they certainly saw me through.
And I think that was part of the offshoot of Vatican Council, which redefined the church and redefined the role of lay people in the church. And so
Definitely.
you were able to take that and run with it.
Yeah, actually it started when I was an altar boy at Sacred Heart. I became interested in the lay people helping even then, because of the organist down there, Herbie Micko, his and the priests that were on staff, and they through the experiences down there, I got to realize parish life can be fun, and lay people care about the church. I think of something like the late Monsignor Butler and his operettas that he had on, and the lay people that were involved with that every year.
Right.
That did a lot for the parish, and the church.
Well, certainly the parish that grew up in, now I don't know anything before Monsignor Butler, but certainly under his patronage and pastorate, the operettas, yes, but there was so many other things going on in that parish.
Oh, yeah.
Like I came into it in '62, and it was really, in a sense, I think, Peter, you grew up in a sense of the church was active and alive, and it was a strong community.
Sacred Heart was probably the most alive parish in the city at that time, in terms of youth work and elsewhere. We had a youth group. I think they called it the CYO. But then they were blessed with a big playing field, and the kids were always welcome to use it, and they did. And as I say, the operetta involved young people, not just adults. So there was that encouragement, all the way along.
Yeah, but I found even when I came there in '62, Peter, to me it was probably the best example of a parish community, in the sense of people knowing each other. And if you came from Sacred Heart, that's how some people identified themselves.
Yeah. At that time, they were proud to say they were from Sacred Heart. You know? I don't know. I suppose the people who are still part of the parish would say the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, I would hope they would.
Yes, but so what would you say was the most satisfying part of your ministry as you look back now and realize 47 years of ministry? What were some of the highlights? If you were writing a book, what are some of the highlights that you would put in it?
Well, I guess the highlights are, again, not just my involvement, because I really had very little to do with it, but I think the highlight would be the different movements that this Holy Spirit called forth in the part of the church I work in, and one of them had to be, as I said earlier, Worldwide Marriage Encounter, but then also Curcio was off and on, was a very strong influence. The Charismatic Renewal was a highlight because it really encouraged Catholics, I think, to be involved with the Scriptures and to pray spontaneously and not just to memorize prayers.
Mm-hmm.
Memorized prayers are fine, of course, but if you can pray a little bit more spontaneously, that might help you feel closer to the Lord. I think in the core weekends that we had, eventually, they came out of Christian Family Ministry, or started just before then, but Youth Corps itself, I didn't realize at the time that a book that I'm now reading called Rebuilt by Father Michael White refers to, I think, 5 points that the church needs, and 3 of those were in Youth Corps, if not all. And the Youth Corps, Youth Corps was for community, worship, and service. Mm-hmm. So and there were small groups. There was the kids, their own fellowship, but then also we had a bit of prayer and, of course, the outreach. And I remember Father Joel Lynch and about 12 high school students in another Youth Corps started Camp Northern Lights.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so, but anyways, that's one of the highlights, is just seeing that, being able to see some of the things that young people can do, you know. And of course we see it today in the church. We see it not only in the church directly, but in the world around us, you know, with the Swedish girl who is trying to get fire up the young people, and therefore the adults really, to become concerned about the climate change. And the young people have always come along, as you know, there's been, over all those years, there's always been a young person coming forward, like we were talking about St. Vincent de Paul earlier. Well, it started with 7 university students in the early 1800s, and as a result of a discussion on social justice in the Sorbonne University, Paris. And that's what gave it birth, you know. So young people, you know, are always active if we give them a chance. That has to be a highlight. Like, from the priesthood, parish point of view, I have always enjoyed going into the schools. You know, it's always been important, and the kids and the staff have always made us, the priests, feel welcome and part of their team. And it's essential that we be there.
That you be there in the schools.
And want to be there. You know?
Want to be there, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I get a sense from your story, Peter, that you've always focused on going in and being with lay people and leading them and inspiring them to do great things.
Yeah, because they, again, the call for the church is to, we have to have a mission statement, and I was just reading, I think it was in that book on Rebuilt, the mission statement is really Jesus' call for all of us to preach the gospel to everyone, and to do so through the 2 commandments of loving God and loving our neighbor. In other words, it's what we do within church in a liturgical sense is supposed to influence what we do out there, because that's where we have to go out to reach people. You know, there are 3 kinds of Catholics that I've been reminded of in this book. You know, and back when we first came over from Europe, or whatever countries we came from originally, we would be known as needy consumers, and certainly needed the church to survive physically. And then in the 50s and 60s, which is the part that I started, I guess, being around, we became compliant consumers, and we did what the church called us to do. And you know, if I was in Sacred Heart Parish, that's where I worshipped. If I moved to another one, I would become part of that parish.
Parish, yes.
Then now we have the demanding consumers, and and among the demanding consumers, we have some who are churched in the sense that they're part of us regularly, but then there's others who are unchurched. They're still part of us, but they are what Father Michael White would call the lost group, if you want.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's the ones that were never church; they've never heard of Christ.
Right.
So and also, so I mean, it's always, it isn't just coming together for the sake of being together. It's to go out and preach the gospel so that other people will feel called to be part of it.
Yeah. Do you find, Peter, that maybe that was very much a part of the early church? You know, and I certainly think Peter and Paul particularly have wrote about that they were messengers, and preachers and teachers. Somehow we got well established as a church, as you know, well organized, and things were going along what we thought was apparently the best it could go. And then Vatican Council kind of brought it out that we had to get more in tune with the times, and that would require finding new ways to proclaim the gospel, because somehow I think the Vatican Council fathers realized we weren't really reaching a lot of people.
You know, and again, as Pope Francis says, we are supposed to go out with the smell of the sheep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and implying that we have to be out with the people. And, you know, I know that there's some tension in the church. It's dangerous, it's a general term, but people can't find the priest home anymore. We don't answer the phone. Well, there's some stuff behind that, but the priests are usually out now.
Uh-huh.
They're not at the rectory. They tend not to be rectory priests.
I see.
Because if you are answering the call, you're out. You're out
Right.
looking for new ways. You're hopefully out with the school or visiting the sick or just that, you know. And you have somebody back at the office who is also a church minister. That might be the bookkeeper or the administration assistant, but they are very much the church minister.
The church, yeah.
And we are, I know again from Temple Affairs, we are blessed with some lay people in that position who, I'll always remember this one parish I was in. I was out somewhere and there was a death in the family. The people showed up at the door, and because the bookkeeper saw her role as a minister, she dropped everything she could and she was there for that person.
For that person.
That's the church.
That's the church.
And I see that more and more. I saw that in the 4 or 5 years I've been with Temple Affairs, you know, the lay people back in the parishes. So the priest can be out, you know, and outside, preaching the gospel outside.
Yeah. Because I guess it's as Francis wanted us to do, is to be out with the people and not be, as you call, rectory priests, but to go to where people are and minister to people wherever it happens to be. So he's not just in the rectory office.
Yeah. I really know from personal experience and from witness that our priests today have a very, very difficult ministry. We always did too, like you and I at the time that we were working through. Yeah, it was difficult, but in another way. We had the support. I really believe we had the support of enough people.
Right.
That we got the strength, the help that we needed to go along.
That's right.
But the people ministering now don't necessarily have that. We have fewer people involved. We have very young, some places, a very young priest, but the congregation are the people in their 60s, 70s or older, you know, and they have different needs. But there's a gap.
Gap there. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, and it seems to me too, the priests today are more and more administrators, and not that they want to be. It's just the times we're living in.
Time we're living in.
The school principals said the same thing within the last 10 years. I noticed that you know, one time you could drop into the principal and informally spend some time and discuss various things, working together, the parish and the school. Now the principals, they try to do their best at that, but they have a lot of administration on them, you know. So, and that happens on the parish level as well, and we're finding that a lot of these things are things that outside that are influencing us, and we priests are not trained for that.
Not trained for it, eh?
No.
Yeah.
Not trained for it.
Yeah. But it's quite a change then, Peter, in the role of the priest. From what you're saying, I get a sense that the role of the past parish priest has changed a lot since when I was there.
Yeah, and it changed a lot for you from the generation before you. Even though you walked between Vatican I and Vatican II, you came in and near the end of Vatican I, right?
Right.
And you had all that experience. So whereas now I know nothing but change. Even from the seminary on, I know nothing but change. And I found it hard for the longest time to minister to people who didn't want to change because that's all I knew, and that's all you got to know over the years too.
Yeah, I can certainly remember difficulties, Peter. I came to hate the word change.
Yeah.
Every time I opened up a mail from head office and it started saying, we'll now change, I got the point I just wanted to upchuck, I guess. But it was part of the time, so I can certainly understand why the lay people kind of found it difficult as well as I did. But you didn't know. Well, you grew up in the pre-Vatican Church.
Oh yeah, I served Mass in the Vatican I Church. In fact, when I went to seminary for the first couple of years, we still had Mass in Latin. So, I had that experience, and there was a whole. And now I look back, there was a spirituality around that and a devotion around it. It wasn't just the fact that the Mass was in Latin. There was a whole concept of an ecclesiology with it. Now we haven't. Our ecclesiology hasn't been pinned down really. Remember the visions with Vatican II? They were talking. I remember reading somewhere that we wouldn't appreciate Mass in Vatican II unless we took a building, say like the cathedral, and put the altar along the side instead of up at the front, so people would sit around it.
Yeah.
Right? Do you remember talking about that? And anyways, we didn't do that because those buildings were really not made for that. But anyway. That was all part of the development, and it's ongoing.
Yeah.
And
I think for me, Peter, when you say ongoing, it's really a good word because the church isn't finished.
Oh, no.
It's alive. The church is a live, living organism and is moving forward for the most part.
Yes.
Do you have any sense, Peter, of what are the strengths of the church today to keep that forward motion going? What would you say are some of the, or who are the people who are going to keep it moving forward?
Are you talking about the theologians, that's on that level, or are you talking about the ordinary people that we're meeting on a day-to-day basis?
Probably both.
Well, I haven't followed a lot on the bigger level. Been too busy with the ordinary every day. So I'm really not up on it, but I would think that ordinary, I think this is as small as it seems, in some ways it's small, is the involvement of technology, like i.e. computers and the internet and all that, is a major thing that will keep us going. Because I know in the diocese, for example, last week we had another workshop on the websites.
Oh, yes.
All parishes are supposed to have. And it's because that's where people are going for information.
Yeah.
And that's just part of it. That's like back when you and I first started, whatever method we had of communicating, that was the way it was.
Yeah.
Now it's the technology, and you're not wasting time with that stuff. That's the way we reach people today.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that keeps it going. Beyond that, I don't know. Like, it's other than the fact that the Lord seems to raise up people that come along and they become prophets, and they leave an influence and they move on.
And I think, like you said about the theologians, you've been too busy to keep up with them. Being retired, I've had time to keep up with some of them, like Joan Chichester and Elizabeth Johnson, and Marcus Borg, and Richard Rohr, just to mention a couple.
Yep.
And there seems to be so many of them that are really gifted. Damien O'Murku, another one. And there's so many of them that are like St. Paul. They have a vision. And it's very positive. And I think that's one of the places where I keep my hope alive, that this stuff will filter into the body of the church, the ordinary people who now have the television where they can hear a lot of this. People with computers can, there's all kinds of great material on there, and people are making references to. And I think that, let's just say, I haven't been out of a parish for so long, I really don't know much about that anymore. I'm just lost.
One thing we're doing right now, as you probably know, and we have for the last 3 or 4 years, is encouraging our parishes and our parents to prepare the children for the sacraments of initiation. And the school helps us, but they're not doing the direct part. We're raising up catechists, and that's coming along. You know, that's more. I guess when we first started it, say around 2015 or whatever, there was some pushback.
Right.
There's less pushback now. And the same thing with marriage prep. I remember back in the 70s, you know, I mean, it was anything goes. If you had an idea for marriage prep, that's what you did. And over the years, we've learned more, people understanding marriage more, and priests understanding it more. I've noticed that, well, I'll say the last 20 years, people coming in to get married wouldn't fight you over taking marriage prep. Whereas back in the 70s, they said, well, I don't need to take that.
That's right.
Remember?
Yep.
But I think most of them now, they see the bleak picture that marriage becomes if you are not prepared for it, that they're quite willing to take it. But the onus is on us to keep developing programs that speak to that need.
Speak to that need and speak to that generation.
Exactly. And that's a positive sign, you know.
But I think, Peter, I know you're retired now, so it's a little different. Maybe, I don't know. But I think hope that somehow as priests, how do we keep our hope alive in this? It's a difficult time. It's a time of transition, not just in the church, but in all of the world. It's a time of chaos and change. And how do we keep going, and live with hope?
Well, one of the things I've noticed in the last number of years in the diocese, and let's face it, that's the church for us on a day-to-day basis, the local parish and the diocese. We've been blessed with not only bishops but other priests who have been interested in providing opportunities for priests to have workshops or experiences like that, and the priests go to them. I don't know if they. I don't hear too many complaining about it, but maybe human nature being what it is, I'm sure some do. But I usually learn a lot from going to those. Right. You know, so there's hope that way. So as long as we're open to learning, like we hear now people talking about lifelong learners.
Right.
That's what we are supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
You know,
that's what I am.
Exactly, you are, and then the priests want to get together to share it. We might share it informally in small groups. Like if a group of priests would get together now, because we have so many different backgrounds in our diocese, we are more apt to talk shop in the sense of the struggles of the church today, which is healthy.
I don't think a struggling church is a bad thing, Peter.
No,
I think it's a good thing because we have to struggle in order to grow. And all the rest of it. Now, Peter, we're coming close to the end of our interview, and here you are beginning your retirement.
Partially, but anyway.
Well, don't forget, Father Leahy said you wouldn't retire.
That's right, and Bishop DeAngelis told me not to retire because the day I do, I would die. And I'm beginning to enjoy retirement. So
That's right.
I think he's wrong.
I hope you prove him wrong, Peter.
Oh, I think he's wrong.
Have you any thoughts of where your life might go from here for the next 20 years?
20 years from now? Might be on the other side of the grass. But I would... I'd like to go back before I go ahead. Going back, I can't imagine doing anything else, so it's been a great ride.
So
I'm really blessed.
So it's been a good life.
Oh yeah, fantastic life. I can't imagine not doing anything else. But looking ahead, one phrase I'm reflecting on right now is letting go.
Oh, yes.
And over the years, I have collected things that I thought were important that I
Uh-huh.
don't need. Um, or not only that, it is a time of change for me,
Yeah.
not just the church. And so I kind of embrace that, yeah, and maybe enjoy the present moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you will, I guess, finding there's a that phase of your life of letting go your ministry, and yet keeping a part of the ministry.
Yeah, like one door closes, another opens,
Yeah.
like throughout life, right?
Right.
That's the same with this, yeah.
So if a door opens, you might go through it.
Well, it depends on who's on the other side. No, yeah. Yeah.
No, but at least
No.
you have a sense of
I'm open to, I'm on a journey.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm on a journey. So.
and you're optimistic about doors opening.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, I'm aware that I need a rest right now. Like
Uh-huh.
I've been even though it's only been a few weeks, I'm aware that I do need a rest before before I'm embracing retirement completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, it's I guess you could pretty well do it at your own speed.
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of it. And for me, retirement was no more administration. And you've talked about
Yeah.
administration today, of a lot more of it. And to me, that was the biggest, to get Mutt Monkey off my back.
Yeah, I agree. Same here.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was good, but it's nice to be free of it and to have a more sense that more choices, I guess. And whatever door opens, that if you want to go through it, you do. If you don't, you don't. So
Yeah.
you were going to say,
No, there's not. I think that's it.
that's it?
Yeah.
Well, Peter, like I say, your story is a good news story. And I think it's, I hope that everybody who listens to you will get a sense that being a priest is a good thing. Being a priest can, when you can look back and say it was a good journey and you're glad you chose this road and that it's been satisfying for you. So I think it's important for people to hear that, because some of the message we get about some priests is that it's not been a pleasant journey for whatever reason. But I think it's really important that you come along and you can share your story, know that you've done a good job, you've run the race, kept your faith, and very much the fact that you're not through. You may be retiring, but you're not through.
As Bishop, I think it was Bishop Meem or Bishop McGrath, and one of them told me that retirement just means you don't have a pastoral assignment,
Yeah,
but you're still a priest.
still a priest.
So I'm still on the same journey, and I'm looking forward to whatever tomorrow brings.
Yeah, and I think you'll find, Peter, once it gets known that you are retired, I think you'll start seeing the phone ring, and that'll be the doors. You can decide whether to go through them or not.
That's right.
I think when I retired, I didn't know what to do, so I made a deal with God. I said, God, I've no idea, but there's a telephone on the wall, and let God call me through the telephone, people calling. And it's worked out really well for me. But you talk about letting go. I had to let go, not trying to control what it's going to do. And when I did, things fell into place. So I'm sure the same thing will happen for you. So I want to thank you for coming today, Peter,
Well, thank you
and
for
sharing
the opportunity.
so openly and honestly with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
God bless. And enjoy your retirement.
Thank you.
Yeah.